The lights go out, there's no noise, and all of a sudden you hear that dun 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 dun.
It wasn't just a soccer game, it was an event.
With a little bit of televised coverage of this thing, maybe we could help it catch fire.
It was something where it got so big, almost too quick.
Came up with a theme song, they started running out of the goal and the smoke and the lights went off.
Looked back and you said, wow.
What we did back then in 1982 is what they're doing now.
People are just going wild about all this stuff.
They said, we'd like you to help us buy the Kansas City Comets. All right, we can do that. What are the Kansas City Comets?
In the 1970s, the game of soccer was beginning to make major strides in mainstream America. The North American Soccer League, or NASL, was trying to establish its presence as the premier outdoor league.
The North American Soccer League in the 70s and 80s was what the MLS is trying to be now. And they were playing outdoor soccer in great big football stadiums, and they had a modicum of success. It was all about the Cosmos in New York, and they played to the great crowds. Lamar Hunt had his Dallas Tornado, but outdoor soccer just wasn't catching on.
And so, a group of businessmen and arena owners had another idea. In 1978, this new group, headed by Ed Tepper and Earl Foreman, formed a hybrid soccer league called the Major Indoor Soccer League, or the MISL. The league first consisted of 6 teams, but it would grow to a 14-team league at its height in 1984.
I had been with a station in Philadelphia called WTAF, was an independent station. And independent stations in the 70s were really kind of obscure and didn't have a lot of audience, but the way you tried to get audience was with sports. I carried the Philadelphia Flyers, and so carrying the Philadelphia Flyers, I met a guy named Ed Tepper. And Ed Tepper in Philadelphia was the starter of the first indoor soccer league.
Earl Foreman, who was involved in the old ABA basketball, he started the MISL, saying, well, let's make this a full-time thing. And basically, the MISL, playing soccer indoor full-time, got the better players. Eventually, the NASL folded, and 4 of the best franchises, including the Cosmos and San Diego Sockers and Chicago Sting, joined the MISL, making this the best soccer played in North America because it was the only soccer played in North America at the time.
The indoor game was considered a hybrid sport. It took the game of outdoor soccer and moved it inside to an arena field roughly the size of a hockey rink, complete with plexiglass and wallboards. Gameplay was frequently compared to that of a basketball game.
I think it was just different. It was the first time, that I can remember a sport being downsized.
They played soccer on a hockey rink with artificial turf and no offsides, and it was a combination really more of basketball and hockey, where you had penalties, a penalty box, you could play power plays like hockey, but you really had to play a lot of the basketball, give and goes and pick and rolls, and it was kind of a combination of basketball and hockey more than it was soccer, other than you were kicking the ball and only one player could use his hands.
It was great. It was really, really good because it added a different element to the game itself. Literally, as a field player, they could use the board as an extra player, and they did. The good players did all the time. But conversely, as a goalkeeper, you have to make sure that you take away the boards as well as the shot. Number 1 is the shot. Number 2 is taking care of the boards.
I equated it to basketball. I grew up playing a lot of basketball, and that transition in basketball is very evident, as it is in indoor soccer, because possessions last a lot shorter in the indoor game.
All boards were different. No matter, you play here, you play in St. Louis, the actual boards were different, the size and the shape and the hardness of them, so the ball does different things. So you had to make sure, especially in pregame warm-ups, you got out there and felt the difference between where balls go and everything.
Outdoor, obviously, the ball goes out of bounds, it goes out of bounds. Indoor soccer with the boards, the play was in, the ball stayed in play continuously, 99% of the time. So that was a major adjustment for me, able to stay focused and keep playing at a high-paced game.
The newness of it, the uniqueness, the mix of hockey and the boards, I think all helped create something that people wanted to see, something new and different.
The Kansas City Comets joined the MISL in 1981 under the ownership of Dr. David Schoenstedt. Schoenstedt had purchased the Detroit Lightning MISL franchise in 1980, moving and renaming the team the San Francisco Fog. A year later, in 1981, he moved the team to Kansas City permanently. A doctor and businessman, Schoenstedt was both a simple and complex man.
He made his daily money being an anesthesiologist, and then would take the income he earned in that profession and put it into business ventures. I understand the first few ventures were failures, and he lost a lot of money, but he learned a lot.
David, obviously, and everybody will attest to this, he was an eccentric, a highly successful entrepreneur. I don't know the laundry list of David's businesses, but he was involved with many businesses and successful with most.
I think a lot of people in town felt he didn't play up to certain segments of the community as he might have. By that I mean, he was a man that always wore jeans, and they were always Levi jeans. He very rarely wore a tie. And he was a big man physically, so when he put his shirt on and a tie, it was a kind of an imposing picture.
He was the only guy I knew at that particular time who would, go to a major business meeting in a, blue jeans and a t-shirt type deal. I mean, that was just his personality.
He was a very unassuming guy who kind of stood behind the scenes. I remember the first day when I got traded, Todd Lewicki picked me up from the airport, dropped me off at the office, and I walked in and I saw this guy in a raggedy clothes smoking a cigarette, and I literally thought it was a painter. He was painting. He was going to paint the office or something, and he was Mr. Schoenstedt.
If he was sitting here with you right now, you would be overdressed, because I don't think I ever saw him with his hair combed or his shirt tucked in or anything other than jeans. And that's the way it was. And you absolutely wouldn't know that he was the owner of the team if you saw him at the Comets games. He loved the Comets. He loved indoor soccer. He loved everything about it.
He was a very successful doctor, and relayed that success into real estate, and made his money, and really enjoyed indoor soccer and thought it was going to be the next thing.
Very eccentric guy. Everything was magic. That was his favorite word. Oh, that's magic. My memories of David are seeing him in his office with his headset on, looking a little disheveled, and this ashtray on his desk just with cigarette butts, and he's just smoking away, pacing around the office the whole time, and always trying to do some deals. So it was great, but he was very passionate about indoor soccer and the Comets.
He was a great owner, and if you saw him, he wasn't one of these guys in a suit and tie type of guy, and he would walk around in blue jeans and a shirt hanging out of his pants, and just a tremendous individual. I mean, he gave me an opportunity to not only play soccer for him, but he also got me in the pizza business because he owned one of the buildings that I had my pizza place in. So he gave me a chance to start my business when I was 27 years old, and I thought he was great. I thought he brought soccer to Kansas City along with the Lewickis, and I think he's made soccer what it is today.
David Schoenstedt not only brought indoor soccer to Kansas City, he brought soccer to Kansas City, where you've noticed over the last 20 years how successful our high schools have been on both sides of the state line, the Aquinas success, and teams going over to St. Louis and winning Missouri state championships, the college soccer, Rockhurst, the UMKC, and so much of that. Without the Comets, I don't believe there'd be that right now.
In Kansas City, soccer wasn't exactly on the sports radar in the early 1980s. It was obvious that building an audience was going to take some effort.
I knew kids soccer, but not indoor soccer.
I knew very little about the sport other than the few games I covered as a sports writer.
I was not a soccer fan at the time, and as a matter of fact did not know much about the game.
When it came, we were kind of making fun of it, like, how's this going to work?
I had never seen an outdoor soccer game of any level.
Don Fortune and I were chosen to do the games, and neither one of us had any prior experience with soccer. I didn't even grow up around soccer. I knew nothing about it.
I followed a lot of sports and always watched sports on TV and just hadn't really heard anything about it other than one day this press conference was happening and everybody's curiosity was kind of piqued of, you know, what is happening and what's this all about.
The Comets, much like most of the MISL teams, had humble beginnings as the team tried to find its footing in the Kansas City sports community.
We lived in the Radisson Muehlebach for 6 months, and we were practicing at the old downtown municipal auditorium in the basement. We had the boards set up and carpet. David Schoenstedt brought all that equipment over from all the boards and nets and that from San Francisco.
The franchise was slow because of a late start with the coaching change and with just being kind of a new team. They only brought a couple players in from that San Francisco team, so it took a while to do things on the field.
To give the team the best chance for success, Dr. Schoenstedt turned to a rival MISL franchise in the Baltimore Blast. 4 brothers, Terry, Tracy, Tim, and Todd, all with the last name Leiweke, had helped the Blast's attendance, and Schoenstedt tapped the quartet to help establish the Comets in Kansas City.
The one thing David Schoenstedt did was by bringing in Tim Leiweke. He brought in 4 brothers. He brought in Tim, who was the marketing genius. Tracy was kind of the one with the moxie. Tracy was the more tactful man in the front office. Todd, now the general manager, president of the Seattle Seahawks, but Todd was kind of the little brother. He kind of was the errand boy for him, did a lot of the dirty work, did the PA, and Terry had a television background. So they brought Terry in to help get their television network deal and that expertise.
The way the thing grew, I know during the 80s, the Chiefs weren't very good, the Royals were very good, and NBA was on its final leg at that time, and they just came in and took this city by storm. They really did. It was a wonderful sales job on the part of the Leiweke family is what it was.
Tim, who at 24 years old was already the youngest general manager in pro sports, walked into Kemper Arena and made his first big headline.
I'll never forget a video I saw of Timmy when he stood in the middle of, they laid a carpet down on the field, and he stood in the middle of the field, and he said, this is the last time you will see, an empty seat in Kemper Arena. I promise you that.
It was Tim Leiweke standing out in the middle of the arena in front of all of these empty blue seats, with the Leiweke style, saying, I promise you this is the last time you'll see these seats empty when it comes in connection with the Comets. So it was pretty intriguing at that point.
People thought, indoor soccer, I don't know what that is anyway, and then to make a claim that they were going to fill these seats.
We came back to the station. I said, let's mark that spot right there, because we're probably going to be playing this over and over and over.
By the second year of operation, they were filled, all of them.
You know what? For 3 years in a row, I think that the arena was pretty much sold out, and that's a fascinating statement, and they were able to deliver.
It was completely different. The medical concept is 2 different things.
I thought it was dramatically different. I was just reading one name, Espinoza, Jorge Espinoza. He used to drink tea before every game. Well, tea dehydrates you. You want some fluids in your body. We would talk to other trainers and physical therapists and say, hey, how are you handling these new type of injuries? And Bill Hoffinger goes, well, Slowo puts onion and tomatoes on his bruises on his knee. And literally the guy did it. And when he came up here for the '83 All-Star game, we were just like, oh my gosh.
They come in after a game, and I got all these ice bags prepared because they've got bruises all over their legs. And they're going, where's the jacuzzi at? The American guys, they knew the value of a bag of ice to control inflammation, swelling, all that good stuff. The foreign guys, they all wanted to take jacuzzis. You want to put ice on this. Well, I won't tell you what they said. I can't tell you what they said. I said, well, That's fine. I'm not going to make you a hot bath because that just goes against everything I've been taught. So the next day they walked in and they looked like the cripples, and the American guys walked in, and of course the difference was, well, we played harder than the Americans. They don't know how to play and all that stuff. We brought players in. They literally got off the plane. I ran down, got them a uniform made, and they got hurt, and they don't know this much English. You're trying to go pain, ow, small, big, you know, and you're just trying to communicate basic communication with them because they don't know and you don't know. You're trying to figure it out.
The Liwickies were years ahead of their time when it came to in-game production. Before music, laser lights, and steam entrances became popular in the NBA and other leagues, the Kansas City Comets were on the cutting edge of interactive game day technology.
The Liwickies were trendsetters, and they used the Comets as the stepping stone, basically.
Just the ball, the fog, they're starting to get in the scoreboards that people could watch stuff there.
The smoke and the noise and just everything. I mean, it was wild. You could just feel it building up. And this thing would go on for like 10, 15 minutes.
The introductions, there were never any introductions. I had never seen any introductions like that before.
The first thing they brought in were the player introductions with the darkened arena, the laser light show. We're on the top of the Kemper Arena, these green laser lights. People had no idea what that was. They came into the arena, and instead of looking on the field, they were looking up because of the Comets logo.
The music, no one ever played music during games.
A lot of what you see today, the music, the advertising during the games, the constant promotion of that and other events, I think a lot of that began with the Comets and the Liwickies.
That stuff is what got most people, it'd get the fans going, it'd get the players going, and it made the environment outstanding there.
The steam coming out, the way they introduced the players coming out of the steam, they darkened the arena, and then in a later time they had a laser show. And those were things that, generally in the other places that we played in, or any other place that I played in, you just walk out and you play the game.
It was nothing like it before. I mean, the NBA never did anything like that. The NFL never did anything like that. You didn't have that. The Royals were good during those days, but you went out, watched a ball game. You didn't even have fireworks at Royal Stadium back in those days. So it was unique.
Pat McBride, my first coach when I got with the Comets, the very first game, and it was an exhibition game, and he said, "You've never seen one of these games." He said, "Just get done with all your work and go down and watch the pregame." And so I go down. Of course, the bowl is dark, and there's a flashlight, going all over the place, and people are just clapping in unison, and you got the theme going, and I mean, the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up, on your arms start to stand up, and people are just going wild about all this stuff.
The Liwickies picked an unusual but effective theme song for the team, the title song for the 1978 film Midnight Express.
The introduction, of course, the famous Midnight Express thing, the dun 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 dun, that'll live in our brains forever.
I can tell you every time I hear it, pick it up on the first note, it reminds me of, it's like a big rush that goes through me every single time I hear it.
Dun 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 dun.
Dun 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 dun.
Midnight, the theme from the Midnight Express. That resonates in everybody's mind. I can't tell you how many people hear that song and it automatically puts you back at the Comets games.
The lights go out, there's no noise, and all of a sudden you hear that dun 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 dun, and people start clapping.
It's a very distinguishable song, and it's very really shows what the Comets were. And the good people that I see around town now, they'll as you start walking by, they'll start humming it and stuff, and it's like, wow, I remember that. It just gives you a good warm feeling. Even right now, to think about it is, wow, this is cool.
As soon as that first beat of Midnight Express played and the arena went dark, there was like this frenzy in the arena, and like everybody was excited and started running and wanted to get to their seats. If there had been a line at the concession stand, it was gone.
Dun 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 dun.
It got me really pumped up, and we knew it was time to get going, and that was our major song for us. And people, I run into, it just happened, I think a couple of months ago, I ran into an old fan and he started saying dun dun dun. I go, oh my God, you know?
Unlike now, when you go to some events, I go to NBA games now and turn the music off already. It wasn't that way, but at certain times in the game, when they were on the power play or they had the momentum and they play that Midnight Express music, I still get some goosebumps just hearing it in the back of my head.
Promotions, giveaways, and halftime entertainment were also an innovative mainstay at Comets games inside Kemper Arena.
There wasn't probably a child in this town that didn't have a giveaway, and some of the giveaways were outstanding.
Everybody got this little Comet pen, and you know, they started waving it, and all of a sudden you see these lights throughout the building. That was, you know, as a player, I was like, this is fascinating stuff. I mean, it just made you feel good as a player on the field.
There was a hat that glittered. It looked like a golf cap, and it glittered, and had a little sound coming out of it. I wore it up to my cousin's wedding in Boston, and ended up being, you know, kind of the center guy in the dance floor. This thing going off, they'd never seen anything like it. And they're going, you know, where'd you get that? You know, I go, oh, Kansas City Comets, and what are they? You know, versus, oh, did you go to New England Patriots game and get it? No, I got it in Kansas City.
Everybody had the red and black Voight soccer balls. You know, hard plastic panel, terrible soccer ball, but everybody had them.
We saw them everywhere. I mean, everybody had one of those balls, and it was a very popular ball in the city of Kansas City. You're right. I think any appearances we went to, you know, everybody was looking at the red and black ball. It was great.
People still talk about those balls to these days, you know, and I guess that's all anybody wanted to use.
Tim was unbelievably creative with even spur-of-the-moment promotions. Yeah, you'd have your special night that you'd be advertising all season, like those sports do. You know, Olathe night or kids night, straight A student night. But they were in a heated rivalry with the Baltimore Blast, and they lost a very controversial game in Baltimore on a really bad call. So Baltimore was coming back here like the next week for a rematch. And Tim turned it into penalty card night. And he had the blue penalty cards. You know, when a player's called for a penalty in soccer, and they hold up the card, and every fan got penalty cards. And anytime a Baltimore player would breathe on a Comets player, the fans were raising up those penalty cards, 2-2. And it intimidated the referees, and the Comets won that game. I don't remember them getting any bad calls, but I remember Kenny Cooper, the coach, was pretty upset with Tim, who he worked with in Baltimore, because it was a heck of an idea.
Tim and Tracy were having a business meeting at Plaza 3. Now you gotta remember, this was at the height or the victory tour of Michael Jackson. They had a waiter that looked like Michael Jackson at Plaza 3. They asked him if he'd ever got that, and my recollection is they said, yeah, that he had been noticed that he looked like Michael Jackson. And that was Michael Jackson at the time.
So he discovers this Michael Jackson lookalike, invites him to Kemper to perform at halftime. And I mean, the moonwalk, the glove, if you didn't know, you would have thought that was Michael Jackson.
The first time he came out in the dark arena, it was almost this deafening that people thought, this is him. And of course, it was a guy named Gary Proctor. He didn't sing, but he was lip syncing it. I know there was people in the audience who said, was that Michael Jackson? Who is that?
I'll never forget that. I mean, he had a lot of us fooled. I mean, I was like, it can't be. It can't be. Is it him? Is it real?
I remember one of my coworkers saying that if this would have been an executive with the Kings or the Chiefs or the Royals, and they saw this young man at a restaurant, could you bring me another cup of coffee? Tim Lywicki sees this young man and says, can you moonwalk?
Getting the word out about the team was truly a grassroots effort based largely on the players becoming heavily involved in the community. Players would spend many days and nights participating in children's soccer leagues and city festivals.
It was about getting out to the community as quickly and as often as possible, and introducing the sport of indoor soccer to the masses, be it in Olathe or Grandview or North Kansas City or Liberty.
I can remember doing, up to 200, appearances a year in the beginning. I mean, just one right after another.
That's how they found their niche, and they stressed that from the day they got here. They were at schools every day. You could walk down the street and somebody would know who Gino Schiraldi was, but they wouldn't know who Otis Birdsong or Phil Ford was with the NBA Kings. And it was that way. I mean, they become little cult heroes in this town, and they were so good. I can remember watching those guys after a game stand and wait and sign every autograph from every kid who wanted it.
There were lines. I mean, I don't know, probably signing autographs an hour and a half before we were able to go in and have a drink or something like that. But we developed a great relationship with our fans.
It was part of what was required of us, and it's the part of what we wanted to do, and eventually we started enjoying it. And everybody has its different segment of the things that we did. Somebody went to school, somebody went to nightclubs, somebody went to community centers, and somebody went to soccer fields and so on.
The Kings were struggling mightily, with the fan base, so they weren't drawing. The Royals were the franchise. The Chiefs were, in their downtrodden years. And so people were looking for something. But also, by going out in the community, the biggest market we were tapping into was youth soccer.
They made appearances. They had, you see Tim Lywicki now, president of AEG, one of the most powerful men in the world in sports. He'd be playing Beat the Goalie. He'd be the goalie, and little kids at different parks all over the area. They were tremendously accessible, both to the fans, at clinics, to the media. I mean, they were readily available. Traveling with them. I mean, in the coffee shops in the morning, having breakfast with guys, or after the game when I had to write a second story for the afternoon paper, just sitting in their hotel room to do interviews. I mean, they were an open book.
It was like a family with our fans. And one thing about us, the players, we were out there. We were mingling with them. We didn't have any kind of attitude.
In fact, they were busier in the off season than they were in the season. Because in the season you had games, you had training, you had travel, you needed rest. But boy, once May, June, whenever the season was over, they had their own camps. They had Kansas City Comets camps that kids went to, but they just were active at any civic or charitable event. If you need a Comet, he was there.
Kemper Arena, which had opened in 1974, served as the home field for the Comets during their entire run.
At the time, Kemper was about less than 10 years old. I think it fit there very well. It's an intimate arena.
It was just the perfect place, for the Comets because of the size of it. It could really put, I don't know if the Comets would ever put 20,000 or 25,000 people in an arena, but I think that 12,000 to 16,000 number was perfect.
I liked it. There were the first years we had no hot water. We had some issues, but you know what? The Lywickis and David Schoenstedt, the city did a great job of making things really comfortable for us.
You get 10, 12, 13,000 people inside an enclosed area in a winter night when the weather's terrible outside and it's 70 degrees and the music's loud. It was the place to be.
Sharing the facility was the anchor tenant, the NBA's Kansas City Kings. As the Comets' popularity grew, the competition and rivalry between the two clubs began to rise.
There was a problem, I don't think among players, but I think among the administration and the office staff, because we were all drawing them, obviously, and we wanted key dates, and they were not drawing a lot of people. So yeah, we were able to steal some Friday nights and Saturday nights, which those are key dates, key nights for any professional sports.
Cotton was a good friend of mine, but he was a little miffed at it, that we had so much of our coverage around the Comets. But that's what everybody was talking about. They weren't talking about the Kansas City Kings. They really weren't.
The Comets drew the envy and the ire of the Kings. You have to remember, in 1980, Kemper Arena, the roof collapsed, and the Kings could have left town. had every right to go leave town. They played that year at Municipal Auditorium, and they got a lease starting in 1981. They got a sweetheart lease for Kemper Arena because they had the leverage, and they controlled everything. They controlled the suites, they controlled the advertising signage, they controlled everything that went on at Kemper Arena. And so here come the Comets, who the Kings looked down their nose at anyway, and the Comets started putting up signage for their games. And the Kings, who had a hard time selling anything, they got all bent out of shape, and they demanded user fees from the Comets on the tickets, and they got into a big snit over who was entitled to which revenue, and it got pretty nasty.
The NBA was going down. It wasn't very good. Magic and Bird and those guys hadn't really come along yet. And I think the ownership here in Kansas City, there were 8 of them, and they didn't have deep pockets, and they were losing money every year. And when they couldn't get the dates, I think that was the final straw. When the Comets were getting all the good dates, the weekend dates, they said the heck with it. And this outfit from Sacramento came in, and they sold it for $8 million. And 10 years later, that franchise was worth $150 million. I don't know what it's worth today, but they ran the NBA right out of Kansas City, and it was the Kings' fault. It really was. I mean, they figured they were the big boys in town, and they didn't go out, they didn't promote it, they weren't in the community, they just figured they could open the doors and that people would come because they were the NBA. Not so. Didn't happen.
I opened my first pizza place in '85. It was my mom's recipe. You know, obviously growing up being an Italian, she loved to cook, and pizza was one of her favorite dishes. And a good friend of mine and partner at that time was Anthony Simone, and he got started. He helped me finance it, got me started into it.
They delivered pizzas, they served pizzas, some good food, and it was a pretty decent little venture for him.
I was towards the end of my career. I was 27, 28 years old, and I wanted to get into that. So we opened the first pizza place down at 328 West 8th Street downtown. My second location was about 3-4 years later up in Olathe.
I've got like a glass upstairs with a picture of him, hand delivering a pizza wearing like Comet socks and shorts.
I had a lot of fun with that. And I could always remember after the soccer games, we were close to Kemper, that the fans would just come in there and the place would be rocking.
The city's CBS television affiliate, KCTV5, was the flagship station for the Comets. When the KCTV management decided to air games, especially during primetime on Saturdays, the team's popularity continued to grow.
We had great support from Channel 5. They carried a lot of our away games, and Jack Harry and Don Fortune did the play-by-play.
They did it right. They came in and they got television behind them. They got an over-the-air network affiliate in Channel 5 to do their games in prime time. It was just incredible. And when you bring a new sport into a town and you can get that type of exposure, you're way ahead of the game.
When I moved back here, David Schoenstedt got in touch with me because Ed Tepper had told him that I enjoyed sports and that I saw the value of putting them on television. So David Schoenstedt sought me out. I was running KCTV at the time, and he wanted to see if there was any way we could help introduce the sport.
Channel 5 had road games and had a TV schedule at the time, and the indoor game was very marketable from a TV standpoint.
Nowadays, there's a lot of TV. There's ESPN. There's lots of different televisions at stations, and they're playing national team games. They're playing pro games and things. At that particular time, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot, but they had a package here in Kansas City that you virtually, probably half or more were televised when you went on the road.
I think every station was there during the warm-ups and doing remotes, and they were there afterwards. Having Don and Jack as our play-by-play and color guys. I'd only been here a short time, but I knew they were two of the main folks on the, at that time.
It was incredible. We would stay in 5-star hotels. We'd go to San Diego. They'd have the playoffs. We'd be in San Diego for a week. Don Fortune and I We were the two main sports guys. We were in San Diego for a week during the soccer playoffs. We did 2 games. I mean, it's incredible. That wouldn't ever happen in this day and age. But everything they did was first class.
At the time, the television, we were trying to make people understand in Kansas City that we were the most involved station in the marketplace. We were CBS, so we had some limitations on preemption. But if it was for the community, you could quite often preempt their regular programming and put stuff on.
We had played Chicago here, I think, and NBA All-Star game was going on, and the game was joined in progress, I believe, after our game.
The NBA All-Star was on CBS and we joined it in progress? Yes. We might have.
Stay tuned now. Immediately following this game for the NBA All-Star game, we'll switch you to the Forum in Los Angeles for live coverage of the NBA All-Star game from Los Angeles, right here on TV5.
I saw this as kind of a youthful, new adventure.
Phil Jones, the greatest general manager I've ever worked for in my life. I mean, it was, let's go do it. There was nothing that we couldn't do. He said, if you guys get out there and you give me the product and we'll do it. And it was a lot of fun. Those days, we don't have those days anymore. It doesn't work that way.
Although it was a mid-sized market compared to other MISL cities, Kansas City's media coverage was second to none.
I think we may have been the only network-affiliated station in the league that carried the games. I don't believe there was any other town that did it. What that did was mandate that KNBC and WDAF at the time give coverage to this sport, because they didn't want to be left out with us doing something that they weren't participating in. So it legitimized the effort to cover the sport.
The Comets were covered almost as aggressively as the Royals, and as aggressively, if not more aggressively, than the Chiefs and the Kings.
We were on the TV all the time, we were in the newspapers all the time.
We had great coverage, even from other stations, Channel 9, 4. And I know Frank Bowl just came onto the picture. He was young back then. He was like, indoor soccer, what's this all about?
KCMO Radio, which was the strongest station back then for sports, covered the Kings, covered the Chiefs, covered every game live with Kevin Wall doing the radio, and the other stations too. Channel 4, Channel 9, 6 o'clock, they do their live shots from Kemper Arena, or originate their sportscast from Kemper Arena post-game. No, it was very well accepted here, and they warranted our coverage with the interest.
Because of the coverage and the intense LiveWiki promotion, the Comets averaged nearly 13,000 fans per match each year from 1981 to 1988.
It was something that you were proud to be part of. No criticism to the Chiefs, but I know that on Saturday we might have drawn 16,000, and on Sunday they drew 14,000 because they were just a bad team back then.
We had great friends in Channel 5. We had great friends at KY 102 that made it kind of the thing to do. And I don't think people from the Midwest had experienced anything like that before.
The amount of people and the amount of energy and the amount of enthusiasm.
I read somewhere back in 1982-83 season, I think, that on a per game basis, the indoor league outdrew the NBA.
In the wintertime, what are you going to do? You could watch some television, or you go to an indoor soccer game.
You had 17,000 fans, and I mean, they were families. Families would come. They would bring their entire, the whole deal.
We'd have teams visit here constantly trying to figure out how we did it, and wanted to take back those learnings to their, I mean, I remember Tacoma had the team. Seattle-Tacoma, they came in. New York came in. The Los Angeles group was trying to figure it out.
I had been at Kemper for many, many games, the Scouts, the Kings, the whatever was down there, and there was never anything that was that spectacular.
Hands down, I never thought we'd put 14,500 to 15,000 to 16,000 people.
It made you proud when you looked in the newspaper and you were in the top 10 of attendance in indoor sports in the wintertime. All of a sudden, who's this? The Kansas City Comets. You got the Lakers, you got the Boston Bruins, whoever was in there, and then all of a sudden you get in there about 8th and you got, what is this? This is the Kansas City Comets indoor soccer team?
And suddenly, players were celebrities around Kansas City.
I know for a fact I didn't have the status as George Spratt, but it was still hard to go to the grocery store without people recognizing you.
The vibe, the energy of people was unbelievable, the following these guys had.
My daughter and her friend were, I guess 12 or 13, and they had huge crushes on all of them. We had Comet stuff all over the house.
I don't think I felt like a big star. I really was appreciative of that, and I believe that we are role models, and I wanted to give something back so that kids down the road will have a great impression about me.
Sitting in Oak Park Mall signing autographs for 2 hours and give away little soccer balls and smile and pictures and all this good stuff.
I knew a bunch of ladies that would go down and watch them work out and practice, you know, and gals, you know, wanting to get close.
It was attractive to the female population because, you know, the shorts were, you know, barely mid-thigh. There
were a lot of passionate fans. I mean, I think a lot of people, you'd be surprised at the end of the year, they have scrapbooks for you and videotapes and all these things that they, you know, they collected.
After the games at home, I mean, we would have huge parties down at the restaurant. It's called Aries at the time, and it was a craze, and we really appreciate it from the player standpoint.
Although the team went to the playoffs in 7 of their 10 seasons, the Comets never won an MISL title, but they still remained one of the hottest acts of the 1980s.
We never won the championship. We made some great runs in the playoffs. We got close, but you know, it would have been great to win the championship for a lot of our fans, and some of the players have been around for a long time.
You know, we weren't the greatest team in the world, but you know, we tried hard.
One of the reasons why they didn't have any championships was, in my opinion, you know, they were in the same division as San Diego. And San Diego had some good teams. I mean, 10 indoor championships. So they won a lot of the championships when Kansas City was, you know, in there.
They had some really, really good teams in their last few years with Dale Mitchell, Jan Goosens, Kim Ronfed, Alan Mayer, but you know, they'd meet Cleveland or they'd meet Baltimore in the playoffs.
When you went, it was an event. It was a happening. If you won the game, great. But you knew one thing, whether you would win the game or not, you knew you would see a battle.
The effort they gave and the likability of the players and coaches and front office and the show they put on was what captured Kansas City.
Well, the history is pretty simple. Well, first of all, I got some dust on my hand. I haven't brought this out for a long time. When I started playing, and even when I was a youngster, you know, as I say, my game was based on aggression, and I ended up getting a lot of hit shots to the head. After 12 concussions and after having top of my head ripped off, I thought, hey, it might be a good idea to try to protect myself. Looked all around. And I found this, and you can see it's really, you know, it's almost like a knee pad. It worked. After that time, I didn't have any problems. It was able to allow me to continue my career. Where if I couldn't use it, I probably would have had to retire on my own accord, because I just wanted to make, for example, 20 years later, like we are now, that we're still able to talk to people and communicate and still be living, basically. I took a lot of static for it. Oh my gosh. People were making a lot of fun of me, teammates and other the opponents. People remember the helmet over anything else. They don't remember if you were any good. They don't remember if you were terrible. They don't remember what your deal was. It was the helmet head. To this day, I still get it, where they still make fun of me a little bit of it, and I'm cool with it.
In 1987, Dr. David Schoenstedt finally decided to sell 100% of the team to a group of 26 local investors. But with the original owner gone and the Leiwekes moving on to other jobs, the team's popularity began to wane.
It goes back to Chris Klauser. He and I had been friends for some time. And he called me one Sunday afternoon and asked if he and the Leiwekes could come over and see me. And I didn't know what the Leiwekes were, but I knew Chris, and I said, sure. So he and Tracy and Tim came over, and everybody introduced each other, and they said, we'd like you to help us buy the Kansas City Comets. And I said, all right, we can do that. What are the Kansas City Comets? And that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. There was about a 2-year gap between the first time we tried to buy the Comets and negotiated with Dr. Schoenstedt and failed because the negotiations never were successful. And then about 2 years later, he came back to us and said, okay, now I'm really ready to sell. He was not an easy man to negotiate with. He was very smart, personable, quirky, but at the end of the day, we succeeded and cut a deal, and I think everybody was happy with it. I think total we had 26 owners, and it was an unusual group because it wasn't a group of civic leaders, it wasn't a group of people that had owned sports teams in the past. It was just a conglomeration of people that we kind of developed as we went along. My recollection is that everybody initially invested $130,000, and we got that money through Merchants Bank. Frank Morgan owned the bank at that time, and we told everybody that we hoped they wouldn't lose their money. We didn't think they'd make money, and they needed to be prepared to lose the money, but that we were doing this to keep what had become in a short time a Kansas City institution in Kansas City, that we would have a lot of fun doing it. And as it turned out, everything we projected came true. We did keep the team here for a while, not all that long. We continued to have it be a Kansas City institution, albeit for not a very long time. Everybody did end up losing all their money, but we had a good time, and I don't think anybody was injured as a result of it.
As fast as the Comets and the MISL skyrocketed to prominence, the team and the league folded by 1992. After taking Kemper Arena by storm less than a decade before, the Comets quickly faded away, thanks to a combination of reasons.
It was almost like almost like a fad, like a hula hoop deal, where the hula hoop comes in and it was hot for a few years and then it faded out a little bit. It's, in a way, that's why I feel a little bit what happened to the indoor soccer here, or in indoor soccer generally.
Trying to sustain that momentum takes a lot of hard work. I mean, you can never say, okay, we're at the top, we can rest now at this point, we're complete. It's like, okay, gosh, we did this really great for 10 years, what are we gonna do next? What are we gonna do next? Because everybody expects you to wow them even more.
You see the opening acts and you see the theme song and you get accustomed to it, and then the novelty of it wears off.
Tim and Tracy moved on from the Comets, so they obviously went on to bigger and better things as far as their careers were concerned. That could have been the start of the decline within Kansas City.
The Legwickies were leaving towards the end too, and they played a big deal in there.
Dr. Schoenstedt had sold it off to 26 people, and so now you're trying to bring 26 people together, and it's just not as easy to make a decision here and there and what have you.
Salaries were escalating, and then just look back in '91, ESPN was in full board. We started getting more computers, the internet. The world got smaller.
The league was suffering. We were running out of money. We never did make money. We had capital calls 2 or 3 times maybe, where the owners put in more money, or some of the owners put in more money. And there's only so many times you can go back to the well for that. So it just, the time came when we knew we couldn't continue.
The league as a whole wasn't growing. There was a constant turnover of teams. Teams were folding, they'd add new teams.
Los Angeles Lasers, the Cosmos, somebody was always threatening to fold. And as a season ticket base, you're going, well, are they going to be? There was always that question.
We needed more corporate money, sponsorship. And, I don't think we could survive just on ticket sales alone. as everything else. Players' salaries went up, and to live on season tickets, it was hard.
Some guys were making anywhere from $120,000 to $180,000 in 1983, 84. And that's a lot of money nowadays. And imagine what it was then. The salaries kind of got a little bit ahead of what you're bringing in on your sponsors and what you're selling on ticket revenues.
Players figured, hey, we're playing in front of 17,000 people every night. We're making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a piece. Something's wrong here. We need to unionize. We need to get behind a union. Manny Schwartz was a goalkeeper at that time, along with Enzo DePede, and they formed a union, and that's what really broke up the whole thing because the money got too big. You had Paolo Marhetic, who was a star player that came in here and played for Kansas City for a while, Gordon Hill. Those guys suddenly went from $40,000 a year to $180,000 a year, and they couldn't pay the bill.
I think the union, it hurt the players. I mean, I played 10 years in that league and I contributed. You know, there are days where I can barely get out of bed because of the knees and that. We don't get anything. And the union came in and yeah, they did some good, but in the long run, I think it hurt us. The owners said, we're not paying this kind of money, and things just started falling apart at the seams.
One of the owners' father passed away. And in probate hearings or just in settling the will, a lot of the money that this owner who was real committed, local owner who was real committed, I remember we were in Cleveland for a playoff series and the news broke about this owner's father passing away. And the owner's father's money and the company's money that the owner worked for was tied up elsewhere. And all of a sudden, they didn't have the revenue stream they thought in that 1991. And there was just nowhere else to turn. So the franchise folded, and a year later the whole league folded because Kansas City was such a pillar that Wichita, Kansas City, St. Louis stronghold really held the league together along with Baltimore on the East Coast and San Diego on the West. And once Kansas City crumbled, so did the league.
I think what it did is I think it helped make soccer a bigger sport, like of what it is now. I think it made a lot of inroads for the sport in America.
The friends that I've met, my ex-teammates that still live in Kansas City, I mean Tim Clark, Elson Seal, Alan Mayer, Enzo DePede, Kim Rodbed, I mean I can go down the list here. And they all love Kansas City, you know, and they stayed around and like I did. So the Comets, I think it was the starting foundation of soccer in Kansas City. We left the mark, and it's been passed on to other generations.
It's like, gosh, you know, that was pretty cool. Can we make that happen again? I don't know, it's just a place and time, I think.
The media criticism was it was a circus act. It's just all a circus act. But if you look at what's going on in today's age, the Lewicki brothers, they brought something to indoor soccer that is now permeated into all sports.
To be part of something like that was just so extraordinary.
All the fun in the world. The fans, the players that I had the opportunity to play with, and the ownerships, and the people that I work for in the front office, anywhere from the Lewickis to the sales staff, I have had a blast in Kansas City.
People embraced it, they loved it, and they started being passionate about it, and that will always be, I think, a part of the people that've seen it and they've experienced it.
It was just the right time at the right place. The window of opportunity was there and it was seized upon.
Here's Savage now in the corner. Savage off the back, Amlong, goal! Gary Amlong on the rebound. There's Elson Seal. Stuart Lee, goal! Stuart Lee. Elson Seal gets the assist. Stuart Lee gets the goal. It is 6-3 Kansas City with a 3-on-2. Frederick Jackson to Greg Villa. Villa. Goal! Big man.
There's Seal. Now Petcher. Petcher with a shot. They score! I think that was tipped out in front.